I really like consuming some weird and what some people would call all fucked up media. One day over the holidays, my mom asked, "Why do you do this to yourself? Do you even pay for that?" And you know what? That is a really good question. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I texted a friend for a quick answer. I texted my good friend Dredo with a very specific question. And as often happens when you're waiting for a response, it never came. I guess I'll have to make a video about this. So before we get started, here are some cool scenes from Evangelion. Think of the following scenario. A 14-year-old boy, abandoned by his father at age 4, suddenly is called back to pilot a giant machine he doesn't understand. But that's not really where his trauma truly crystallizes. One of the most powerful moments of the Neon Genesis Evangelion is when Shinji's Eva is forced to destroy another Eva that's being possessed, only to discover his friend Toji was the pilot inside. And in that moment, Shinji's world shatters. Every defense mechanism he has built, the politeness, the compliance, the desperate need to be useful, all of it crumbles as he realizes the very thing he's been using to seek his father's approval has made him hurt someone he cares about. We watch as he retreats further into himself, his mind building new walls, convincing himself that connecting with others only leads to pain. It's not just about the event itself. It's about how that moment reshapes his entire way of experiencing relationships. And mind you, that's just episode 18. By the time you get to the hospital scene at the end of Evangelion, you will be the one being traumatized. I'm not traumatized, you're traumatized! Yeah, we have a video to finish. Let's just keep going. Trauma isn't just about the event that caused it. It's about how that moment lives on. It's in the nightmares that wake you up at 3 in the morning. In the relationships you sabotage before they can hurt you. In the walls you build so high you sometimes forget what's behind them. And yet, somehow, we are drawn to stories that reflect these wounds back at us. Maybe because in seeing others navigate their trauma, we start to understand our own.
Is it really me?
Traumatic horror exists in every medium we consume. Look at Gottfried Helnwein's hyper-realistic paintings. Children's faces twisted in silent screams, bandaged figures staring into void spaces. His work, born from his own childhood trauma in post-war Austria, doesn't need supernatural monster or jump scares. Like every piece of traumatic horror, it simply reflects our own psychological distortions back at us, showing how trauma makes the familiar world feel suddenly, violently wrong. So let's go back to the topic. Why do we pay to feel our pain? It's a strange contradiction. We'll cancel therapy appointments, dodge difficult conversations, run from our own trauma. Yet somehow, we are drawn to media that forces us to confront these very things we are trying to avoid. And my theory is that we are not just consuming stories. We are seeking reflections of our buried pain. Some sounds stay with you forever. Check this out. These aren't the screams you'd hear in a horror movie. They're not designed to make you jump, not crafted by sound engineers to maximize terror. These screams are real. They are coming from The Work, a documentary filmed inside Folsom Prison, where men, both inmates and civilians, confront decades of buried trauma. And somehow, thousands of people choose to watch this. Not just watch it, they come back to it, they recommend it, they discuss it endlessly online, leading into numerous awards nominations in prestigious film festivals. Inside Folsom Prison's walls, we begin with a circle of men letting out their inner lions, howling in unison like some primal invocation. But what follows is far more haunting. The men in here are as tough as they come. I mean, there's a man who's been incarcerated for 22 years in for murder and armed robbery. Another one nearly cut someone in half with a machete. That was his goal, leaving his victim paralyzed for life. And what brings that man to collapse is he thinks that he's responsible for betraying his mother. It's not their crimes that bring these men to their knees, it's what they have never allowed themselves to feel. And god damn it, there is something deeply frightening and strangely beautiful about this. In one particular session, we witness past memories transform into something completely different. A man consumed by judgment and anger is pushed into confronting what has hurt him. And it looks something like this. Suddenly, this is not just a bunch of men talking in circles, this becomes survival. This man is physically representing the pains of his past against 7 of the worst inmates in California's correctional system. He has to be physically restrained as years of emotional armor begin to crack. The moment is terrifying because we understand it. We too have felt judgment and rage curdling inside of us. What makes the work so uniquely affecting isn't just witnessing these breakdowns, it's recognizing ourselves in them. Every time an inmate's voice cracks, every time their hands start shaking, we see a reflection of our own carefully hidden vulnerabilities. We watch them break because deep down, part of us needs to see that it's possible to survive that breaking. The film's executive producer put it perfectly. The work is about showing that no matter how strong or tough you think you are, everyone carries pain. The challenge is finding the courage to let it out. He's not just telling his story, he's telling ours. That's what keeps drawing folks back to this documentary. Not the spectacle of breakdown, but the raw honesty of what healing actually looks like. When trauma becomes too much to process, sometimes our minds create different versions of reality. This is where Fran Bow takes us into territory that is both beautiful and deeply disturbing. Following a young girl and her beloved black cat, Mr. Midnight, we witness how trauma can shatter not just life, but reality itself. After being institutionalized following finding her parents dead, Fran's only goal is to reunite with her feline companion and uncover the truth about who murdered her family. Through its central mechanic, involving a mysterious medication called duotine, Fran Bow forces us to constantly question what we are seeing. One moment, we're in a seemingly normal children's ward. The next, we are witnessing nightmarish visions that might be more real than the sanitized version we started with. One filled with gore and monsters of whom Fran has the courage to battle. The other, despicable humans who look like her, but who act monstrously and immorally. Wait, pause! What the fuck is this dude going on about? Give me a kiss, buddy! She's just a girl. Don't you just wish that he would die? Okay, pause again. So, I forgot to mention earlier that there may be some spoilers going on, and I hope that's okay. Look, just watching the fucking video. The switch between realities is not just a gameplay mechanic. It's a perfect metaphor for how trauma survivors often have to navigate between the normal world and the darker reality they carry inside them. Even Mr. Midnight's presence becomes part of this questioning. Is he really there? Is he something more? These questions mirror our own uncertainties about what's real when trauma reshapes our world. What makes this game particularly effective is how it presents these shifts through a child's perspective. Fran's journey through the psychiatric hospital and beyond isn't just about uncovering mysteries. It's about how young minds try to make sense of experiences too horrible to process directly. Overall, the game can be summarized by what Dr. Palontras tells Fran as he tries to save her. Your body was destroyed, but you wanted to keep being Fran. You wanted to keep your life. So you took on this empty shell to maintain all your precious memories. And my god, why does that hit so hard? Maybe because that's exactly what we're doing when we seek these kinds of stories. We're all just trying to keep being ourselves while carrying something that threatened to destroy us. But sometimes the most affecting horror isn't about fracturing reality. It's as simple as climbing back to yourself. At first glance, Celeste looks deceptively simple. a challenging pixel art platformer about climbing a mountain, jump, dash, grab ledges, avoid spikes, the kind of game that would be at home in any retro gaming collection. But like the mountain itself, there's so much more beneath the surface. This is Madeline's story, a young woman battling anxiety and depression who decides to climb Celeste Mountain. Not because she's a trained climber, not because she has any real plan, but because she wants to prove to herself that she can. Anyone who has ever started therapy or faced their traumas knows this feeling, the desperate need to prove you can overcome yourself. As Madeline climbs higher, she meets her darker self, a part of her that knows every insecurity, every doubt, every reason she should give up and go home. Does that sound familiar? It's that voice in our heads that keeps us from facing our own traumas, that tells us we're not ready, that we'll never be ready. But here's where Celeste does something remarkable with this metaphor. When you die in Celeste, and let's be real, you're probably going to die hundreds, maybe even thousands of times. No judgment, it's okay. Every death is a practice move. Every retry is building muscle memory, not just for your fingers on the controller, but for your heart in facing what scares you. Just a quick respawn and another chance. Because that's how real healing works. Every panic attack, every emotional breakdown, every step backward isn't failure. It's just another attempt at figuring out how to move forward. Think about it. How many times have you retreated from facing your trauma? I didn't mean this to be triggering. And if you are too young to remember this scene, oh, you're so very lucky. How many therapy appointments have you canceled? How many times have you told yourself not today? Celeste turns this pattern of attempt and retreat into actual gameplay. Like in real trauma recovery, it's not about how quickly you can get back up. It's about the fact that you get back up again and again and again. And then there's that moment, that beautiful, frustrating, honest moment, when Madeline realizes she can't beat her dark self. She can't outrun it. She can't fight it. Instead, she has to learn something far more difficult: acceptance. It's not about winning against your trauma or defeating your anxiety. It's about learning to climb with it, to integrate it, to understand that these darker parts of yourself might actually be trying to protect you. In their own wounded way, sure, but they are trying to protect you. The game's creator, Maddie Thorson, crafted something profound. They understood that the path to acceptance isn't a straight line. It's more like a scattered plots of attempts, failures, and occasional breakthroughs. Just like real trauma recovery, you can't brute force your way through Celeste. You have to learn its rhythm, you have to understand its patterns, and most importantly, accept that failing is part of the process. Sometimes the only way forward is through hundreds, and I mean hundreds of deaths. And now, we are back to the original question of this video. Why do we pay to feel our pain? And I think the answer lies in the fact that we can engage with them on our own terms. Unlike real trauma, which doesn't come with a pause button, these immediate experiences respect your limits. Having a rough day, save Celeste for later. Finding the work too intense to watch, stop it and come back at another time. Need a break from friends' disturbing realities? Take it. No judgment, no pressure. It's just you deciding when you're ready to wade back into those emotional waters. This ability to step away isn't weakness. It's part of the healing process. It's learning to recognize your own limits, to understand when you need space, and most importantly, to trust that the journey will still be there when you return. Whether it takes you a day or a year to come back to them, you're still valid, and your healing is still legitimate. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Every time you engage with these works, every time you let yourself feel something through them, you're not just consuming media, you're practicing healing. You're finding your own way through the darkness, at your own pace, on your own terms. And there's something absolutely beautiful about that. It takes incredible courage. I know right now it might feel impossible. Like you're stuck on the same screen in Celeste, dying for the 100th time. Like you're trapped between realities like Fran Bow, or holding back screams like those men in Folsom Prison. finding your way to face your fears and being happy, whether it's through climbing a mountain or watching others break, is in itself an act of courage. And I truly believe sometimes that's enough, because you are enough. Keep climbing. I believe in you.